Neo-Nazis take a seat on a London council. The extreme right-wing racist British National Party has scored its first political success in Britain. In a council by-election last night, it took the Millwall ward of Tower Hamlets in London's East End. The area has been the scene of a string of vicious race attacks. A week ago, 17-year-old Asian Qadis Ali was beaten senseless by a white gang and left for dead. He's still in a hospital with a coma.
What can anybody do about it?
Fight them, basically.
But how do you mean fight them?
We'd say that the ideas that they put forward outside football grounds, on working class estates, have to be combated politically, but also that they've got a physical agenda, and that has to be met physically as well. People have to defend themselves against the fascists. They can't just turn the other cheek. All the objective factors that existed in Europe exist here. The only thing that will make a difference is the subjective factor, whether people are prepared to take them on or not.
see your mother, you can hear ocean roar. Sitting quiet in the corner, put you another record on. God hates you, come sunny. Concentrate with your VCR. Watch another action movie and dream of me.
What the fuck? Isn't it all? Thank you. Gus, can you hit the Elvis button?
Shaving my shoulders, I'm getting it all shaved off. Shaving my shoulders, I'm getting it all shaved off. Shoulders, 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 I'm getting it all shaved off.
Hey everybody, what's up? If this is your first time joining me, by all means, that is the intro every time. I believe it's from St. Laurent 420. I found that video a long time ago while I was just looking up Simpsons shit posts, and let me tell you, that one stuck in my head, and I was like, well, I need like a final thing to say, like the stream's about to start. And that was the one that popped in my head. It's got no ads on it. It's got credit at the end, so I could just nicely crop it. So I thought it would be a good thing to do. How has everyone's week been? Wow, what a week to be Canadian. The most embarrassing nationality, I would say typically, but absolutely lately, with everything that's been going on. I mean, even before, what can I say on YouTube? I don't know the terms of service. So can I, the Nazi gate, I guess. Pause to be demonetized. Even before that, Pierre Poilievre dropped the N-word in the House of Commons. I believe that was the first day because of Trudeau coming up with the allegations against India for assassinating Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Notice how I said Nijjar and how easy it was. And it may have been a mispronunciation. If it is, I apologize. I believe it's Nijjar or Nijjar. Notice how I didn't say the N-word? Kind of easy. And if I did, I would immediately apologize, but almost nobody brought it up. A couple people, Nora Loretto and Erica Ifill, were like, excuse me, maybe we should talk about this. And then I think there was a piece in the National Post about how, well, isn't the National Post, whoever the person was, like, isn't it nice we don't have to talk about, we don't have to get caught up in the details. So that was the start. And of course, everybody who knows what this stream is about. I just saw the PP clip today. That's crazy. I know, and it's insane that that's the second least racist thing to happen in the House of Commons. So, I assume everybody watching this or interested in this knows what's up. They know what happened. But I kind of want to go through a timeline of exactly what happened. And, like, over the course of 5-6 days now, it's in 5 days. It happened on Friday. And today, it's, as far as I'm concerned, things are still happening. Trudeau apologized today. But I want to go through a timeline. So before I actually get to anything here, I really want to point out that this happened, this bookend of a week, with the N-word dropped the first day, I believe, and the Nazi being praised unanimously at the end of the week. We had one of the biggest nationwide attempts to demonstrate for fascism since the convoy. It obviously didn't get to that level. Thankfully to all the counter protesters, and a bit of luck with some of the organizers being incredibly disorganized, as the far right is often done. But on Wednesday, it was the big day across the nation. A bunch of people showed up to 4 kids. But when I stood there, it was just people screaming about how trans people don't exist, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I talked about it a bit about this last week, and if you read The Catch, I covered a little bit of it. So that was the biggest week in a fascist demonstration since the convoy. Thankfully, it wasn't as big, but that is important to know. And this is something that the Conservatives were told not to comment on. Even though at their convention they passed a couple resolutions that are anti-trans. And it wasn't reported on, but I can't imagine the Liberals would want to have a widespread, comments on it, just in case the wrong thing got out. And the NDP too, probably. And anyway, no, it was a big to-do, and they didn't want to cause a shitstorm, or maybe even acknowledge it. Like, Doug Ford did not acknowledge it when it was at Queen's Park. I feel like it's gotten lost in all the Greenbelt, things like that, but Doug Ford has not acknowledged it. By the way, if I'm too quiet, it was a little too quiet last time, so I'm going to turn it up a little bit. If it's too loud, let me know in the chat. Roto and JT wouldn't have apologized for it had CIJ and Banana Breath not lodged a complaint. That's what it takes to get any minute accountability. Correct. I thought this was going to blow over, because of course I thought it was going to blow over. If anybody's been paying attention to Canada and Ukraine Nazis in the past 10 years at least, I mean, that's being charitable, in the past 70 years, you know that this is not that surprising. So I was surprised that the more surprising thing was that it was called out and it was addressed. And it was because it was big Jewish organizations who called attention to it. And these organizations also, have a big stake in topics about Israel. Obviously, there's overlap there. And, there's definitely some nuance there. However, I think this discussion as a whole can kind of go without that, because it's just the fact that Big Ords brought it up. And holy shit, thankfully, because can you imagine if this didn't go anywhere? Yep, Doug Ford was not at the land defense protests either, despite being invited. I don't know what he was doing. I really wanted to go today. I was in the middle of class, and I already did the last week for a protest. I couldn't do it again, and I really wanted to show up. I saw people walking with signs when I was done, so hopefully it was a good turnout. I saw a couple pictures. But no, I want to go back to last week. So it was the biggest fascist outpouring, and, there's a big hush-hush about it. And then Friday, when I was reporting at the North York, Scarborough area, apparently it's officially North York, but people said Scarborough, and whatever, at the school, that was fascism. I stared at it in its face. I saw it. And quite frankly, it was really terrifying in a weird way. It was terrifying kind of existentially. It wasn't terrifying. I didn't think they were going to win. I think that the counter-protest had a really good setup, by the way. Shout-outs to Students for Queer Liberation, who I learned about this through Instagram, and they coordinated a lot of this. Shout out to them. So that was Friday. And then I feel like this has gotten lost in the whole scandal. Probably not by my viewers. But we need to go through exactly what happened on Friday in Parliament. Zelensky visited, so they had that whole, we need to send more weapons to Ukraine for this proxy war thing. And I'm going to bring that up, but that's so clearly not what this... It's tied into it, but, we can get into that a little bit later if it comes up. But that's where they brought him over, and I feel like it should be said that while there is a huge, noticeable fascist presence in Ukraine with the Azov Battalion, and there's definitely anti-democratic processes happening, banning communist parties, crushing down on Orthodox churches because they're Russian, the Russian language, there's tons of stuff like that. I feel like it is related to but distinct from literal Nazis, because they are fascists, but they were not Waffen SS members. They probably love them, but they were not them. So it is important to point that out, and there is a relationship to that. Obviously, it's how we got to this point. But this has gotten so lost. So let's take a moment. I'm streaming. This is the Global News stream of the entire House of Commons thing. It's 53 minutes. We're not watching all of it. Sorry, I didn't mean to move this. That's fine there. I'm gonna move me. Awesome. Maybe. Nope, okay. Gonna move me back. I thought it was gonna be you could see Global News, but I'm just letting you know it's the Global News stream that we're gonna watch. So this is what Anthony Rota said, and we're gonna watch what he said in the standing ovation. So let's do that.
We have here in the chamber today Ukrainian Canadian world veteran from the Second World War who fought the Ukrainian independence against the Russians and continues to support the troops today.
I'm going to play that again because fought for Ukrainian independence against the Russians, World War II.
And one that must never be forgotten. We have here in the chamber today Ukrainian Canadian world veteran from the Second World War who fought the Ukrainian independence against the Russians and continues to support the troops today, even at his age of 98. His name.
We're gonna keep watching because he's going on with his name and a couple other accolades. That was 18 seconds. I counted when I first saw it. I'm not on Twitter, but obviously I saw that the video had been going on Twitter before the outlets, so I had to just go over there to watch. Apparently I'm still in scroll mode, even though I'm banned. 18 seconds.
His name is Yaroslav Hunka. And I was going to say he's in the gallery, but I think you beat me to that. But I'm very proud to say that he is from North Bay and from my riding of Nipissing-Temiskaming.
I just want to point out, it's at this point where somebody, you know what, in the moment, sure, in theory, stand up and clap and go, wait a second, brain cog thing, and go, I just did something despicable. There's enough time now where the cogs turn and you go, wait, what did he say? Fought the Russians in World War II? And there have been outcries in Parliament before. I think because of the N-word thing, this came up. I think it was in Nora Loretto's piece where it's like late 2000s, Justin Trudeau, as an MP, called up and called Peter Kent. He was just like, you piece of shit, like yelled it across the room. That could have happened right now. Someone could have stood up and been like, he's a Nazi. Nothing. Nothing.
He's a Ukrainian hero, a Canadian hero, and we thank him for all his service. Thank you.
Oh, another one. Wow, I didn't even see this. Okay, whoa, wait. Okay, wow, this one's going a long time, too. We should count and see how long this one is. Okay.
A Canadian hero, and we thank him for all his service. Thank you.
Is this one longer? That one was, so it was 49:24 when it started. Here, I'll move me over so you can see. 49:24 is when it started, and it's at 49:52. 49:24, so that's 20, 26, 28 seconds. So it was longer. So for a grand total of 46 seconds, to be fair, interspersed, they stood and praised a Nazi. 26 seconds? Yeah, sorry, I'm bad at math. So that's 44 seconds. Between 44 and 46 seconds, standing and praising a Nazi. And keep that in mind when this comes up again. Because I'm going to go back to the beginning. And we're going to listen to this again.
We have here in the chamber today Ukrainian Canadian world veteran from the Second World War who fought the Ukrainian independence against the Russians.
Who fought in the Second World War for Ukrainian independence against the Russians. Who's the youngest member of Parliament? Probably like some Keener and the Conservatives who's like 28 or something. I know there's a couple of the Ontario PCs. Like, let's just say for like the youngest is like 20, let's say 26, because not unheard of. The vast majority of them are like above 40. I haven't looked into it, but I mean, if someone can disprove me, happy to correct myself. You're telling me 338 people, the vast majority of whom are over 40 years old. So they got an education in the 90s, closer to World War II, don't know that Canada, the only war it ever declared, it was part of World War I, but it was kind of part of the British forces. So this is the only war it ever declared. You're telling me our leaders are unaware of this war, the biggest event in human history, the basic alliances? I feel like you ask anybody on the street, well, maybe not now, actually, this is pretty depressing, but if you had to list who fought in World War II, for anybody with a cursory knowledge, USA, UK, USSR, against Japan, Germany, Italy. These people are politicians for a living. I don't buy for 1 second that they had no idea. But, as we'll see, it's kind of what happened. So, hoo boy. Okay. So that was the event, and it was worse than I remembered, because I apparently missed the part where they did 2 standing ovations instead of the 1, and it lasted 3/4 a minute. The AP press was the only one that reported his name, and it was in a byline. It was underneath a photo, so it was not even like, sorry, there's a bit of muffling there. It was not even in the story. It was just like, oh, this is a photo with Yaroslav Hunka, some dude who fought Russia in World War II. And then the first, I would say, big piece to come out. They're not the sharpest tools in the shed, not that I'm defending them. No, they're pretty fucked, honestly. Ignorant at the very least. At the very least, the best case scenario. And then the piece that really came out that kind of like narrowed it down and like was like, hey, was by Forward, a Jewish newspaper. They found a picture of him. That's him there, by the way, in the middle, the right there. That's him. That's his Nazi uniform. And then it goes, here's a photo we found, courtesy of Combatant News. They gave a standing ovation to a Nazi. They gave a standing ovation to a Nazi. While Zelensky was there. And they go through the war crimes that the 14th Waffen SS division, SS Galiciana, I believe is how you pronounce it. I apologize if I got that messed up. Hudapiniaka massacre, burning 500 to 1,000 Polish villagers alive. Oh, by the way, when they joined, they had to pledge allegiance to the big guy and had to be underneath the head of the SS. So, this came out. And, this is not like Pulitzer Prize winning journalism. Apparently, and I haven't found it, but also I don't need to fucking look it up. This dude wrote blog posts about... Sorry. It's a bit better. This dude wrote blog posts about what he did. Clearly unabashed. And it would have taken a quick Google. I believe Andrew Scheer said that. And we're going to get to question period. Not Andrew Scheer, because who cares? You just Google his name, and that comes up. So, how long does it... If you're in his comments, I don't know if they have access to their phones. Maybe not. I hear fought against Russia in World War II. My immediate thought is, wow, that's a Nazi. Or an Italian fascist. Not so much Japan. But mainly Nazis. Oh, wow, I didn't even read this part. I'm going to scroll down just so you can see it, and then I'm going to highlight it. In post to the blog dated 2011 and 2010, Hunka describes 1941 to 1943 as the happiest years of his life and compares the veterans of his unit who were scattered across the world to Jews. And then it talks about the Nazi monuments that we have. 2, I believe, this division. Yep, 2 monuments to the unit. One in Oakville, which is outside Toronto, the other in Edmonton. How does it get worse? How does it get worse? Like, I thought it was bad. I thought... Give me a second. This sweater is getting to be a bit much. I got a shirt under this. Don't get crazy, but... The happiest years of his life in public blog posts? This man is a war criminal. I've seen people be like, oh, he was forced to do it because the Soviets... No fucking way. Most Ukrainians fought in the Red Army, obviously. The source... Oh, sorry. I thought you just meant the sauce. I'll put it in the chat, actually. Forward.com. Feel free to peruse at your leisure there. Sorry, I just need a minute. This is fucked. Sorry, I'm still processing what I just fucking saw. Yes, we do have to hand them over to the Polish people, or, you know, Canada for once could prosecute a Nazi war criminal that escaped here, but I'm not holding my breath. So, fuck. Let's go to what happened after this, because it did start with, I wouldn't say just that article, but it started with online buzz from people who were like, the fuck is that? Because that's, of course, what it is. And I believe the Forward article came out. Let me just double check. I want to know the exact day. I believe it came out on the Saturday. So I'm just going to double check that. September 24th. Sunday. So it came out on the Sunday. So the internet buzz happened Friday and Saturday and went, holy shit, holy shit. I think the AP News thing might have been Saturday. I don't have it on my list of things. You're giving me a source? Confused. Yes, this guy also straight up published documents on what he did. I don't know if he published documents. I think he just published, like, his experience. And I think he was very careful to not say certain things. But that's just what I gathered from it. So I don't know for sure. I'm not fucking looking them up, especially on stream. But so then we have this, where a Jewish group demands apology after MPs honored man who fought for Nazis. And this came out on the Sunday as well. Who is in here? Friends of Simon Wiesenthal Center for Holocaust Studies was like, hey, you honored a Nazi. Please rectify this. B'nai B'rith. Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs. So, you know, all these very heavy hitters who, again, you know, this is tangential, but one of the reasons that they're so influential is because they do push, you know, Israeli priorities. But I think we can separate that from this. This is just, like, Nazis rightfully getting called out. And fuck yes. You know what? I'll hand it to them, obviously. And, you know, we can compare how they don't nearly raise the alarm on, you know, the apartheid state against Palestinians, which is 100% true. But, you know, this in particular, good for calling out the 3/4 of a minute standing ovation that the fucking Nazi got. Whew. Oh boy. Okay. So then this came out, and I was like, oh my god. Is stuff gonna happen? Because anybody who is up to date, and we're gonna go through a little bit of it later, is very aware of the Canadian relation with Azov. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland has defended her grandfather, who was a Nazi collaborator. An open one, too. He was a propagandist for them. She's held up an OUN flag. So, anybody who's been paying attention, this is not that crazy. This is pretty standard, actually. Okay, we are going to get into that. In fact, I do want to spend a good deal talking. Sorry, Steve, your comment about I'm frustrated with people that are Liberal Party fanatics saying, well, it's complicated, not all SS were bad. That's what scares me the most. And it should, because the Nuremberg trials decided that the SS were all bad. That's kind of one of the things that happened, which means that the education on Nazi war crimes and the Holocaust of this country is in the fucking gutter, and that's very disturbing for plenty of reasons. So now let's go to Monday, which is very... Sorry, somebody outside my door. Let's just... I'm gonna tee this up, and then we can watch the performativeness of the entire House of Commons to be like, well, actually, we had no idea. So let's do that, and I believe this is CPAC. Just want to make sure. Yeah, this is CPAC. This is the opening statements. And here's Pierre Poilievre speaking in French, and it will be translated because I don't speak French, unfortunately. Wish I could speak every language, but I can't.
The news that the House of Commons paid homage to a Nazi Waffen SS officer here at the House of Commons has upset the world and embarrassed Canada. It hindered the victims of the Holocaust and gave a tool of propaganda to Russia. The Prime Minister, and only the Prime Minister, is responsible for the excess.
It gave a tool of propaganda to Russia. That's why it's bad. You know, not the... That's another thing, too. Justin Trudeau, in a statement, was like, let's not give Russia the opportunity to use the... Motherfuckers. This is not about Russia right now. This is about you standing and clapping for somebody who was all but confirmed to be a Nazi before you stood and clapped. Unless you're ignorant or a child or unfit for the position. So which is it? It's one of the two.
Success of international visitors here in Canada. Will he take responsibility for this massive issue that he helped to cause? The Honourable Government House Leader.
So we're going to go through Karina Gould's response, if you can call it that. But the worst thing is, you got to hand it Poilievre. He's right. Justin Trudeau shares culpability here. But you know who else does? Everybody who heard fought Russia in World War II. And guess what? You've been dog whistling to fascists since the convoy. So shut up. It's so insulting to our intelligence. They think we're stupid. They really do. And they think that they can get away with this. Like they would have even brought this up if there wasn't a media furor over it. The media didn't even bring it up. That gap from Friday to Sunday, guess what? Guess what? It wasn't in the headlines. It's because people online kept saying it, and then it spread to Jewish organizations who had demanded an answer. And that's the first time I saw it, is because news media was conveying that complaint instead of the actual headline. House of Commons unanimously applauds Nazi. So, just saying. What does Karina Gould have to say for herself?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Like every member here in this House, I was extremely disappointed with this situation, and personally, as someone who was a descendant of a Jewish survivor, I was very disappointed.
Then
like
you should have
everyone
known.
here. And as the leader of the opposition well knows, and as you mentioned, Mr. Speaker, it was your decision and yours alone. Neither the government or the Ukrainian delegation knew about this ahead of time, and it's something that we are all very disappointed by. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Okay, so first of all, sorry, there was a comment in chat. Worldly Bong. Every year there's a vote in the UN General Assembly condemning Nazis, and almost every country votes for it. Canada always votes against or abstains, citing that it helps Russia. I'm going to get real serious for this. Not really. I have seen people say that it is Russia being opportunistic to push that vote when they have neo-Nazi groups inside the country. And you know what? I don't think that critique holds water at all. But let's be perfectly honest here. Let's accept it. Let's say sure. Why aren't you voting? Why? It helps Russia. Well, it would really give them one if we acknowledge that Nazism killed 27 million of them. Sorry, there's a couple more comments. Canada used to vote for it until the Ukraine war. It flipped from 2 against to like 40. I would need to see confirmation of that. I know Canada for a while has done it. It might have been since 2014, the Euromaidan. The speaker forced us to stand and clap. He's a wizard. Yeah, it's insane how you are a descendant of somebody who was murdered in the Holocaust. And you are like, well, I didn't know that the person who fought against Russia was a Nazi. How am I supposed to know that? Every defense that these MPs give is literally like, I'm so stupid that I am unable to process words. I literally am illiterate and I don't speak English or French. I can't speak any language. So I'm a little baby. How am I supposed to know things? It's pathetic. It's genuinely so disgusting, and this thing's going to get swept under the rug since the resignation and Trudeau coming out today, and the Conservatives are going to keep being like, well, it's Trudeau's fault, even though they stood and clapped with that happen. It's so pathetic. It's so insulting, and every single Canadian who's not a fascist, and everybody in this country who's not a fascist, should be like, hey, we need to see more resignations. Or consequences. Hell, you know what? I'll take a pay cut. If everybody in there gets a 10% pay cut, you just throw it in a fucking tax thing or whatever. Never gonna happen. Because if one person goes, actually, we should have known, then all of them do it. So they're kind of in this mutually assured destruction where it's like, well, you know, the Conservatives are like, well, we'll blame the PM because that's what we always do because we have nothing of our own and Justin Trudeau sucks. Rightfully so. The Liberals are going to be like, well, we didn't know because we're little babies and it was the Speaker of the Houses. The NDP is going to be like, well, you all should have known better and be very smug about it, even though they stood and clapped too. The Bloc is going to be the Bloc and, I don't know, probably make this about Quebec or something, but they stood and clapped too. I don't know, the Green Party. I don't think I saw a single person not clap. We can go back and maybe we can look. But it's so insulting that they think we're that stupid. And fair. A lot of them are. Everybody here has had arguments with liberals online being like, well, actually, it's very nuanced. Nobody was the good guy in World War II. Guess who the bad guy was? It's pretty easy. 2 big ones. 3 big ones, but Nazi Germany, Imperial Japan. Fascist Italy was terrible too, but it was so pathetic that I couldn't even get fucking things going. So, you know what? They get off literally just by being incompetent, even though they were absolutely terrible. And it ended the right way. It should have happened sooner, but I mean, people on the ground were working towards that, and I'm not going to criticize that. I'm just saying the gas station is the place to party in near the end of the war. Anyway, I guess we're going to go back to this shit. Back on screen. Sorry for the rant, but Susan Delacourt wrote, go off King. Thank you. Susan Delacourt wrote a Toronto Star article about how the true victim of that incident was Zelensky, not because he was Jewish, but because it undermined Ukraine? There's a very nuanced discussion to be had about Zelensky's leading of Ukraine, and I think a lot of that criticism is warranted. You know, how he's courting the far right. I don't think he's a Nazi or a fascist. I genuinely don't. And it's not just because he's Jewish. I think he's literally just, it's like alliances of convenience. And, you know, you're under war pressures, so you're going to have to do some of that. especially when your allies are people who are just, they want to pull this against Russia. I think there's tons of criticism to be made there. But if I recall correctly, wasn't his grandpa or some of his family were killed in the Holocaust? I feel like that's the primary thing there, and all this like focus on the current war is exactly how we got in this situation in the first place, because we focused on the current war, and then we were like, you know what, actually it's the other war is the exact same, and Russia's always been the bad guy no matter what. It's pathetic. Didn't see a single person not clap. I focused again and again. There was somebody in one of my comments who was like, this person like circled and like isn't clapping, and it's like, that's a still. I don't know what you're talking about. But let's go to I was gonna stop just after this one, but let's go to a little bit more of what Pierre Poilievre thinks is a cogent point.
Question was for the Prime Minister, because indeed it is the Prime Minister's sole responsibility to guarantee the diplomatic success of major world leaders who come to this country. It is the Prime Minister whose government is responsible for both security and diplomatic vetting of everyone that comes in close proximity of a foreign leader on Canadian soil, particularly a foreign leader who is at war. The government has now admitted that they vetted everyone who was in attendance that day. Will the Prime Minister apologize for having vetted this individual and letting him come anyway?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
I'm gonna do a little bit more of this, but we're not gonna do the whole political theater of this shit. Also, look who's here. Look who's here. Look at her face when Karina Gould responds. And then we'll see how sorry she is.
Mr. Speaker, like all members of this chamber, I am incredibly disappointed in the fact that this individual was invited, as you yourself, Mr. Speaker, have confirmed by you, was recognized in the gallery. I found out, just like every other member in this House at that time, that this individual was present. This is deeply embarrassing for us as parliamentarians, as Canadians, and it is something that I think all of us take extremely seriously, and I would ask my honourable colleagues not to politicize this moment. Thank you, Mr.
That is so funny. That is so funny. Please don't politicize the fact that we, as an entire governing body, praised a literal Nazi who said the happiest years of his life were from 1941 to 1943 in the Waffen SS unit. Wow. And then there's Christopher Freeland, who we're going to talk about, who was like, you know what, we didn't know. We had no idea. These things, you know, it's a terrible mistake, but none of us in the room have an understanding of Ukrainian history, and none of us have firsthand experience with Nazi ancestors, and none of us speak for the Ukraine community, even though there are Ukrainians in Canada who are not Nazis. Quite a bit of them, I'd imagine. Probably the majority. You know, I wouldn't know with all this fucking coverage of it. If anybody in that room should have known, guess what? And she clapped the entire time. So that's embarrassing. It just keeps getting worse. Sorry, just looking at chat now. Zelensky is a Russian-speaking Jewish person from East Ukraine and grandson of the Red Army vet. The U.S. was extremely against him getting elected. Then he got elected, got corrupt, named in Pandora Papers. I don't know his direct rise. I do know that he was named in the Pandora Papers, so that is interesting to know. I would imagine there's a lot of Ukrainians with Red Army vets as relatives, because the Red Army had a lot of Ukrainians in it, and Ukrainians are, as a whole, very responsible for defeating fascism, which I think gets lost in this a lot because of this whole scenario with the Russia-Ukraine war and this whole whitewashing of Ukrainian fascists in Canada. The majority of Ukrainians helped liberate us from, well, not Canada specifically, but helped liberate Europe from fascism. The majority of Ukrainians before and probably after we shipped over all the Nazis were very active in labor groups. And I would say the majority of them now are not Nazis. Again, I feel like this gets lost because we keep talking about Ukrainian Nazis. I don't know. It's so pathetic that I have to explain this. Probably not to people watching this. They're probably very aware of it. But it's just the talks are just so much about right-wing Ukrainians. Can the left-wing Ukrainians get some love for what they did for us? For humanity? Seriously? Like, it's... All right. Oh, sorry. And now he's stuck in this position while he is getting praised for how brave he is. I mean, yeah, I think it's a very complicated situation. I think Zelensky's doing probably the best he can. Not to say there's nothing to criticize about it, but I don't want to get too bogged down in the Ukraine-Russia war because this is about the House of Commons praising a Nazi. They're only upset because they got caught. Correct. They'd be completely agree with what this guy did if he had a label attached that was something else. That's right. That's actually a good point. It's literally just that he's in a Waffen SS unit. If he was in like a paramilitary group of like the OUM or something like that, I feel like it would get bogged down quite a bit to where it wasn't. Maybe it was some hullabaloo, but they could be like, well, we weren't aware of like the intricacies and that their alliances and and something like that. But like he's literally like an out and proud Nazi. I'd argue most of the Ukrainian Nazi conversion before this was coming straight out of Russian bot farms. I'm a little confused by that. Anyway, feel free to clarify, and I will read that again. Sorry, there's like a heart in front of it. It's a little weird. Let's go to what... There's another one. Did I feel like we already watched this one.
Mr. Speaker?
Yeah, we did. That's on me. And then, is there anything else in this worthy of talking about? Because I feel like Trudeau doesn't talk. No, I don't think so. It's just Karina Gould being like, we were just a little baby, we didn't know. So this happened, and then afterwards, Karina Gould... No, sorry. It started with NDP and the Bloc. They were like, this dude needs to resign. And it's like, hey, pot me kettle. And then... It was the Conservatives, I think. I don't actually remember seeing a reporting on it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they... maybe they focused on the PM too much. I can't speak to that. But the NDP and the Bloc were like, hey, you should resign. And then it's very funny that Karina Gould was like, yeah, you should resign. And then Melanie Joly, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, for people who don't know, was like, yeah, he should resign. And then Chrystia Freeland said he needs to resign. Oh, boy. I cannot stress enough how everybody in this is a hypocrite and thinks we're stupid. But, like, my goodness. I just cannot stress enough how much Chrystia Freeland is the worst. It's really terrible. So let's watch, after all these people were like, Anthony Rota should resign. This happened yesterday.
Have your attention, order. It's with a heavy heart that I rise to inform members of my resignation as Speaker of the House of Commons. It has been my greatest honor as a parliamentarian to have been elected by you, my peers, to serve as the Speaker of the House of Commons for the 43rd and 44th Parliament. I have acted as your humble servant of this House, carrying out the important responsibilities of this position to the very best of my abilities. Je tiens à vous remercier,
I would like to thank you, my colleagues,
pour votre appui
for your
et
support
votre
I don't think he
for
did
your
resign as
collegiality.
MP. I think he just resigned as Speaker of the House.
My term as Speaker.
The work of this House is
My term
above
as Speaker.
any of us. Therefore, I must step down as your Speaker. I reiterate my profound regret for my error in recognizing an individual in the House during the joint address to Parliament of President Zelensky. That public recognition has caused pain to individuals and communities. including the Jewish community in Canada and around the world, in addition to survivors of Nazi atrocities in Poland, among other nations. I accept full responsibility for my actions. My resignation is effective at the end of the sitting day tomorrow, Wednesday, September 27th, to allow preparations for the election of a new speaker. Until that time, the deputy speakers will chair the House proceedings. Thank you. Merci.
The staggered claps. Now let's go back. The staggered is like, all right,
will
I'm
chair
done.
the House proceedings. Thank you. Merci.
We're off the hook now, right? We're off the hook. We're good? Okay, off. We're good. Literally. Can I be honest? You resign as MP speakership. Can I be honest? In this parliament, speaker is a fake position anyways. They never really curb the worst elements of parliament, so this means nothing other than him taking a pay cut. Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, it's supposed to cut down on political theater, but ever since this has been televised, if you've ever actually watched Question Period, it's so useless. It's literally just talking points against talking points the entire time. They should bring in some normal people and have them ask questions. And by normal people, I do not mean fascists. Because they've brought in enough of those to the House of Commons. Oh, boy. So, what happened after that? So that's the timeline. He resigned yesterday. Well, I guess he technically resigned at the end of today, but he announced he was going to resign yesterday. And then this is the funniest fucking thing I've ever seen in my goddamn life, and we're going to watch this. If you haven't seen Trudeau's apology today, well, you better strap in, because my goodness, this is from Global News, by the way. I'm going to move me, Global News. You can see that right there. I do credit wherever I get my video clips from, and feel free to watch them. I'm just going to play his, because there is Question Period afterwards. I haven't watched it. Again, it's such political theater. Like, nobody cares, dude. So let's watch Justin Trudeau apologize for the terrible error. Prime Minister Blackface has some apologies to make.
In a few moments, I will address the House in front of all Canadians, in front of Jewish people here and around the world, and Ukrainians, to offer Parliament's unreserved apologies for what happened on Friday. The Speaker was solely responsible for the invitation and recognition of this man, and has wholly accepted that responsibility and stepped down. This was a mistake that has deeply embarrassed Parliament and Canada. All of us who were in this House on Friday regret deeply having stood and clapped, even though we did so unaware of the context.
Even though we did so unaware of the context. That's crazy, dude. That's crazy. You clapped when you were unaware.
We have here in the chamber today Ukrainian Canadian world veteran from the Second World War who fought the Ukrainian independence against the Russians.
Having stood and clapped, even though we did so unaware of the context.
I'm just going to keep playing these back and forth.
Ukrainian Canadian world veteran from the Second World War who fought the Ukrainian independence against the Russians and continued.
Having stood and clapped, even though we did so unaware of the context. It was a horrendous violation of the memory of the millions of people who died in the Holocaust, and it was deeply, deeply painful for Jewish people. It also hurt Polish people, Roma people, 2S LGBTQI+ people, disabled people, racialized people, and the many millions who were targeted by the Nazi genocide.
Important note. a lot of those people had overlap with Soviet citizens. The Holocaust began with bullets and the burning of Eastern Europe because the Nazis believed that Slavs were subhuman. Important that he doesn't bring that up. Yeah, he did leave out the communists because of course he did. Because it's very uncomfortable that the level of anti-communism is a little bit more polite, but it's about the same. Just the more liberal anti-communism.
Every year, there are fewer and fewer Holocaust survivors to share firsthand the horrors of what they experienced, and it is therefore incumbent upon us all to ensure that no one ever forgets what happened. I also want to reiterate how deeply sorry Canada is for the situation this put President Zelensky and the Ukrainian delegation in. It is extremely troubling to think that this egregious error is being politicized by Russia and its supporters.
So I actually, I'm not on Twitter anymore. I got banned, Lamau. But I have, obviously, friends who are still there. And they sent me I think it was a Russian embassy in Canada or like a Russian foreign agency, being like, how dare Canada applaud a Nazi butcher? And it just goes on like this. But at the same time, I don't know how to explain this. They're right. If Russia has any ground on this to talk about the toll of World War II, not just Russia, all the former Soviet states, it's so pathetic. Like, you can't even be like, well, Russia is politicizing this. Yeah, dude. 27 million people were murdered. And fighting them. Zhukov really was prescient when he said, we liberated them and they'll never forgive us. Genuinely.
To provide false propaganda about what Ukraine is fighting for.
I mean, like, the fact that that's tied into it is, I guess, noteworthy. Again, we as anti-imperialists can understand that this war is for geopolitical domination and economic gain. The World Bank and all the loans being given to Ukraine certainly shows that, but also Russia has their geopolitical influence, and we could talk about the role of NATO in this, of course. But Ukraine, while being increasingly, I mean, it's definitely headed there, at least from what we can see, is not a Nazi state, I don't think. I'm sure there's room to be argued there, but they do have disproportionate influence and all that. But at the same time, I believe it was early on in the talks, Putin dropped denazification as a requirement for a ceasefire, which it's just opportunism for him. Like, that's clear. But at the same time, when most people in Russia have relatives who were murdered fighting the Nazis or just being alive when the Nazis invaded, just saying. Anyway.
Friday's joint session was about what Canada stands for, about our steadfast support of Ukraine's fight against Putin's brutality, lies, and violence. It was a moment to celebrate and acknowledge the sacrifices of Ukrainians as they fight for their democracy, their freedom, their language and culture, and for peace. This is the side Canada was on in World War II. And this is the side we are on today.
Wow.
Sure.
Let's play that again.
And for peace. Their freedom, their language and culture, and for peace. This is the side Canada was on in World War II. And this is the side we are on today.
It's so easy to say Russia today is not the same as the Soviet Union. So easy to say that because it's true. And I don't quite know the role to which Canada played in the collapse of the Soviet Union, but at the very least, it was morally supportive of its collapse. But that would be inconvenient. wouldn't it? It's really actually kind of quite clever what he's done here, where he he goes through fighting for freedom and democracy and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it was like, Canada fought for this in World War II, and we're helping Ukraine fight for this today. Well, who else fought for it in World War II if Canada fought for it? Because they're allies. It's genuinely, I mean, it's good politicking. It's disgusting, but it's good politicking.
Before we go to question period, I just want to rule on the point of order raised on yesterday by the member for Oakville North Burlington concerning unparliamentary language. In her intervention, the member alleged that the member for Thornhill used the unparliamentary language in her characterization of the government House Leader. She also asked for an apology to the minister. The Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader reiterated that he had also heard the term used, disgrace, and it was unparliamentary. He asked that the member apologize. Lorsqu'elle a répondu, la députée de Thornhill.
I'm sorry, this just kept playing, but then I was like, oh, this point of order must be about. I'm sorry, disgraced is unparliamentary language, but not the N-word? How does that work? Well, it works when everybody stands up and applauds. A Ukrainian hero who fought Russia in World War II. Fun choice of words. It'll let them even say we weren't on the same side of the USSR. We just worked with them. We stand with freedom. Yeah, correct. It's good politicking, and it's also very funny that disgraced is unparliamentary language when the N-word isn't. Cool. So I guess that takes us to today. And, we can go through a couple things. I'm going to switch to the webcam because I have an article that I'm going to put in the chat. But unfortunately, it has a symbol of something bad in it. So I don't know if I can play it on stream. But let me see if I can find the headline and put it here, because the headline's important. And then I'll just open another tab with below, and we can go through that, because I don't think we can actually show what's going on in the picture, because it's a certain symbol, and it's not great. So, with that being said, oh, that's close. This happened in 2021, where Canadian officials met with the Azov Battalion, a group that's pretty much Nazis, even though the media has tried to be like, stop being Nazis. And their worries were that they would have it be reported. Nothing else, just that people might find out. And this is done by David Pugliese, who is probably one of the best reporters working today at the Ottawa Citizen, which is owned by Postmedia, but he's been there so long, I feel like they can't fire him, which is so funny because he posts stuff like this all the time. It's great. Canadian officials who, by the way, read the whole article. We're not going to go through all of it. The Canadians met with and were briefed by leaders from the Azov Battalion in June 2018. The officers and diplomats did not object to the meeting and instead allowed themselves to be photographed with battalion officials, despite previous warnings that the unit saw itself as pro-Nazi. The Azov Battalion then used these photos for its online propaganda, pointing at the Canadian delegation expressed hopes for further fruitful cooperation. So this happened in 2018. We found out about it in 2021. So that's 5 years ago. Canadian officials were like, okay with Ukrainian Nazis. Like, of today. This was still the Trudeau government. I don't think the specifics, I don't think it's any of the ministers. I believe it's just military leaders. Read the whole article. Oh, almost scrolled up to it because it's a helmet with that on it. So we have been doing this for a while. And not only that, but another article by David Pugliese also kind of points out something that's not too great. Canada failed when it trained Ukrainian troops linked to the far right, says Nazi Hunter. This was in 2022. But this is Canada training the Azov Battalion. Radio Canada reported Monday that Canadian military personnel trained both members of the far-right Azov regiment, as well as at least one Ukrainian soldier who sported the crest of a Nazi SS unit from the Second World War. Hey! Everybody loves a prequel. Come on. God. Canadians have 100% been there for years. My childhood friend ended up being one of those people. Doesn't surprise me in the slightest. I believe it was 2014 when this all started. I'd have to double check that, so don't quote me on that. In 2017, Canada's Joint Task Force Ukraine produced a briefing on the Azov Battalion, acknowledging it links to Nazi ideology. Multiple members of Azov have described themselves as Nazis. This was before the meeting, by the way, in 2017. Wow. Cool. I love this fucking country. It's so great how we're just so in love with Ukrainian Nazis, which, by the way, are not the majority. I feel like we need to keep saying that because it's true, but they really don't cover that part because it's a little bit embarrassing. Now, if you want some good coverage of this, I highly recommend The Maple. They did a piece about it happened after it happened and said, what the fuck? They did a piece on Chrystia Freeland's supposed expertise. Long story short, if she was an expert, then why did she clap for a Nazi? There's only two answers. Either one, she isn't an expert, or two, she knew full well what she was doing. Interesting. Definitely highly recommend those. That's kind of all I had. That's where we're at now. And I think it's going to go away because other than Trudeau's apology, which had very much a sense of finality to it. Great work from Davide. Absolutely. Davide is fucking amazing. Somebody said that they read Davide Mastracci, Jeremy Appel, and me and consider us all the same. And I was like, oh my God, me? I'm a scrub. Ridiculous. But no, that's where we're at today. I think it's going to go away. Trudeau's apology had a sense of finality to it. He's not going to resign over this. But let's talk a little bit about the political consequences from this, because the next election cycle, at the very least, the Conservatives are going to have attack ads being like, remember when he brought in a Nazi? Listen. We're fascist light, all right? We're not actual Nazis. You know who brought actual Nazis? And by the way, we had no idea. There's no way that we could have possibly known that this Ukrainian World War II vet who fought against Russia could possibly be a Nazi. We're just little babies. But Justin Trudeau knew. And, he could have done a simple Google search. He could have done a simple Google search. Nobody else could have. Just him. Because that's how things work. And also, we didn't bring this up on Friday or Saturday because maybe it was Saturday, actually. They probably ever commented on it. But we didn't bring it up until there was a huge media uproar because we were too busy working on the economy for Canadians. So that's going to happen, which is very funny because the Conservatives have been skyrocketing in the polls, which means they have to do nothing. I mean, if there was an election tomorrow, the Liberals would lose so bad. Like, it's I know polls are kind of flawed, but like when you've been like just crashing for however many years, and then the latest thing is actually, sorry, we brought a Nazi into the chamber, like, it's embarrassing. And I honestly think that that's the last we'll hear of it, because as long as this war goes on, we're going to keep on rehabilitating Ukro-Nazis, because we've been doing it for years, and this is just the first time that it's actually come up in public. And the NDP might run attack ads about it, but does anyone genuinely believe that they have any relevance at all at this point? Like, with the supply and confidence deal, oh boy, it's embarrassing. I can't imagine supporting the NDP. I can't even imagine supporting the NDP right now, being like, they're terrible, but they need to be better because of blah 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 blah, blah, and they can definitely improve because blah, blah, blah. So we're fucked. We're so fucked. Oh my god. I can't believe he posted. I'm still stuck in my head. I can't believe he posted a blog post where he said that 1941 to 1943 were the happiest years of his life. That adds another level. Literally a simple Google search by anybody involved before he got there. This does not excuse anybody who clapped because, once again, fought Russia in World War II. Come the fuck on. But the blog posts, and a lot of people, I guess we could talk about kind of the worst of the liberal responses, because to be fair, I have seen a lot of liberals be like, what the fuck? But the worst of the liberal responses have been people doing double genocide theory, where they're like, the USSR was just as bad, if not worse, which is a fucking lie. It has been people saying it's a nuanced, complicated situation, so you can't blame this person who volunteered for the Waffen SS. You can't... I think that's the worst of it, has been the faux calls for nuance. There was somebody on my TikTok who, by the way, I'm on TikTok at Yukot Scott. I guess I should have, things if I'm going to be doing whatever. Somebody on my TikTok who was like, well, guess who was aligned with Nazi Germany from 1939 to 1941? And first of all, if you think a non-aggression pact is an alliance, then you have a child's brain. It's a non-aggression pact. If you want to criticize it, by all means, I definitely think there's criticisms to be made. There was trade between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany from that point on. But if you don't bring up Stalin's attempts to have an anti-fascist alliance, if you don't bring up the Munich Agreement, if you don't bring up the France-Nazi Germany non-aggression pact, the Belgian one, the Estonian one, the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't bring that up, you don't actually care about nuance. You just want to make the Soviets look worse. And there's nothing you can do in the realm of reality that makes the Soviets anything like Nazi Germany. Nothing. There's nothing. I'm sorry. I'm not. And there are definitely mistakes to be made. Famine happened because of terrible policies. A lot of people died. And you can definitely lay that at the feet of a lot of actors in that. And you should. They didn't engineer mass ethnic cleansing at that scale. It never happened. And it's disgusting, frankly, that anti-communism has gotten to such a point where people just say this shit to defend a Waffen SS member. It's disgusting. And anyway, this person on my TikTok was like, after I said, hey, all these other non-aggression pacts, what about that? And their response was, exactly, it's complicated. There were no good guys in World War II. Hey, bud, just popping in to say hi. I'm traveling or I'd hang out. Yeah, no, by all means. Yeah, Tubstifer, thanks for coming in. By all means, feel free to leave. Yeah, no, what's complicated? There were no good guys in World War II. I don't think the entirety of the Canadian Parliament rising to worship a Waffen SS member who was described as fighting Russia in World War II during Canadian peacetime. And we are in peacetime. I know we're sending a lot of things to Ukraine, but Canada is not at war officially. So during peacetime, you're going to pull war is complicated. No fucking shit. War is complicated. Yeah, dude. Who do you think the bad guys were? If you say there were no bad guys, and which is the implication of there's no good guys after explaining this, then guess what? Nazi sympathizer. It's been really disturbing to see that. It's been really disturbing to see people claim that they had no idea. They got tricked into it. Again, we've played this. I'm going to play it one more time because it's frankly like I'm in disbelief that people literally are not like watching it, and it's so obvious.
We have here in the chamber today Ukrainian Canadian world veteran from the Second World War who fought the Ukrainian independence against the Russians.
Okay, and I want to point something out here, because I've gotten this comment a couple times. People have said, you can see his eyebrows raise after he says it. He realizes what he's done. Okay. Let's take that for granted. I don't think it's true. Well, let's say it is. Let's watch this clip.
Ukrainian Canadian world veteran from the Second World War who fought the Ukrainian independence against the Russians.
So this is apparently the point where he goes, oh no, I can't believe what I've done. This is what people are justifying it as. Let's watch the rest of this.
And continues to support the troops today, even at his age of 98.
Okay, smiling. Standing ovation. If this is the point that you're like, oh shit, and you don't want to implicate yourself, what would you do? I would stop. I'd be like, thank you for your applause. Now let's go back to whatever. Guess what he keeps doing?
His name is Yaroslav Hunka.
He keeps going.
And I was going to say he's in the gallery, but I think you beat me to that.
Ha 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 ha. You joke about it after you realize, supposedly, that you just introduced a Nazi. You joke about it. That's what I'd do. I would never do that because I'm not fucking a fascist or this ignorant. So, I've seen people say that. If anybody has seen any other things, by all means. I don't quite have Twitter, so I can't exactly scroll through that, and I don't have Blue Sky logged into this browser. But honestly, I had a discussion today with somebody, kind of tangentially. It was about tanky discourse, which is the worst thing in the world. And this person was pretty... Sorry, I just heard a weird noise. No, man, I just caused a weird noise. Maybe I should have this stream. I'm just fucking everything up. No, I heard this person, I was about tanky discourses, like, oh, tankies are wrong about everything, and et cetera, like, they don't explain reasons. And then this one person, one of the listens I said that MLs were right about is, like, Ukrainian Nazis. And then this person was like, actually, they're not right about that, because Ukrainian Nazis aren't a huge thing. And then I said, guess what Canada just did? And their response was, they didn't know. Which tells you one of two things. They didn't watch it, which is obvious. And maybe they're Canadian, but they're certainly not up on Canadian leftist issues, because otherwise, you'd fucking know. I love being a tanky. Same. I'm a meat tanky, for anybody who... Heathcliff is a tanky boy. That's why it's the thumbnail. It's me to meet tanky. No, it's very funny, in a very absurdist way, but at the same time, it's really disturbing that this is being whipped out. And quite frankly, I think we're in a really bad spot, and it's gonna get worse. Well, that does it for me. I think we're pretty much done. I don't have much else to say. Meet Indeed. Follow me at Blue Sky. I'm at ucottscott.bsky.social. I post aggressively since I'm off on Twitter. Thanks for everybody for hanging out. Really appreciate it. Thank you for calling this shit out where you can, because it's quite frankly disgusting that this happened. I'm shocked. Genuinely shocked that there was a backlash to it, because this shit has happened so much. Like when Krista Freeland posted her holding up that banner and then deleted it and didn't comment on it. Yeah, thanks, Steven. Appreciate you being here and hanging out. And you too, Worldly Bong and Parker, and Pixel on Drugs. I don't know if you're still here, but I appreciate you too. That's just everybody I can see. If you're somebody else, thanks for being here too. And yeah, I guess that does it. Hopefully next week we won't have to talk about the Ukrainian Nazi being praised in Parliament, but who knows? Who knows where this crazy country is gonna go? All right. See everybody next week. Bash the fash. Bye.